This video doesn't have planes in it!
So we're all at least a little autistic, right? And part of being a Tylenol baby means you probably have a never-ending cycle of hyperfixations. For me, it could be planes, Star Wars, Warcraft, shooting, swords, milsim, Halo, musical performance, mythology and history, Goon, and currently the fixation is hypered on Elden Ring, and I want to talk about it, so my brain stops itching. So here's just some neat stuff about Elden Ring. The first thing we're going to talk about is Astel and falling star beasts. At first glance, you might not think these are very related. The falling star beasts look like giant bowls made of rock, and Astel looks like if a dragonfly was made out of a skull and anal beads, which were made out of the universe. But if we look closely, the falling star beasts don't have bull horns. They actually have large articulating mandibles. And on fully grown falling star beasts, we can see what looks like Astel's eye starting to peek through the fuzz on its head. On the way to the Astel boss fight, we see smaller versions of Astel hanging suspended from the ceiling, missing the vibrance in his beads. What we're witnessing here is the life cycle of one species, from falling star beast up to Astel. And it almost exactly mirrors that of a real-world animal, the antlion. The larval form, or nymph, of an antlion are covered in small spikes and have huge mandibles, similar to those of a falling star beast. They sit and wait at the bottom of holes that they dig and wait for other insects to fall in, where they're promptly chomped upon. The falling star beasts also mirror this, but rather than a hole dug by the beast, they sit inside a crater. It's highly implied by the name and their rocky body that the beasts fall from the sky as a meteorite, and then the crater we find them in is actually their impact crater. Antlions undergo a complete metamorphosis similar to a moth or a butterfly. So the suspended proto-Astels we see are the recently hatched adults fresh from their cocoon. These and the fully realized Astel we fight as a boss is remarkably similar to the adult antlion. So yeah, they took a neat little insect and made it a cosmic horror beyond my comprehension. And I love that. Next, I want to talk about these big-ass carts. They're not an uncommon sight in the lands between. They appear to be very common during the second act of the journey, literally littering some areas. In a few cases, a chest in the back will have loot, specifically a weapon. The implication is that these carts act as a kind of hearse, used to carry a fallen hero to their grave, with their weapon carried in the chest in the back. Several times throughout the game, you'll encounter these carriages actively being pulled along by two trolls. Yeah, I don't know why chestless rock giant would read as troll to you, but that's what trolls look like in this world. They're always escorted by a handful of guards, sometimes with a cavalry element, essentially making this a funeral procession. Now, typically during regular gameplay, you kill some of the guards, run up, loot the chest, and be on your way. But if you follow them, much like the falling star beasts, you can find a story being told by these caravans. This first one we find in the first zone of the game, Limgrave. The weapon in the back is a great axe, which is pretty innocuous, not much of a story to tell. The description on the axe says it's commonly used by chieftains of the Badlands, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's who's dead in the carriage. If we allow the trolls to carry the cart to its destination, we arrive at a small ruined town with several other carts strewn about it. In those carts, we find a flail and a somewhat ornate longsword, which are, again, pretty basic weapons. From what I gather, these ruins are being used as a kind of casualty collection point for the troops stationed here in Limgrave. Nearby, where we originally find the cart, a battle is taking place against a primitive race known as demi-humans. And further to the south, on the Weeping Peninsula, where the forces of Limgrave have essentially lost their foothold, we find another caravan along the main road that has been attacked and overrun by revolting slaves. I believe these caravans in Limgrave are transporting dead warriors warriors back to the main castle from the front lines. In the next zone, Liurnia of the Lakes, we find an outpost of Cuckoo Knights, the military arm of Raya Lucaria, which is basically Hogwarts. Traveling away from this outpost is another caravan, and in it we find a sword that was used by a Carian knight. The House of Caria is the ruling family of the area and the leaders of Raya Lucaria. They implore knights that use a combination of martial skill and magic. Most of these knights are human, but some are trolls, one is a half-wolf, and one is even a dragon. This caravan is heading north, towards Caria Manor. So at first it seems like it's returning the body of a dead knight to the home of its patron family. However, the trolls stop by the lakeshore. It's important to remember that the Cuckoo Knights have, in the past, openly rebelled against the Carians, so it may actually be dumping the body of the knight in the lake as an act of deliberate disrespect. In the picturesque Altus Plateau, we find another caravan carrying the weapon Great Stars, a heavy spiked mace covered in blood. Its description tells us that a bloody star is a bad omen, and interestingly enough, I believe the body and weapon are to be dumped, like that of the Carian Knight. If we follow the trolls, we come to a cliff with another caravan tipped over. Perhaps whoever is in the cart had ill will and the forces of the capital saw fit for it to be discarded. Not far away is a caravan graveyard full of wrecked carts, likely full of fallen heroes left over from the battle that took place at the capital gates. And finally, we have two caravans in the consecrated snowfields, which is a late game area. One appears to get lost in the snowstorm, but the other makes its way to Ordina, a gateway town to a place called the Halig Tree, planted by a potential god, Mikola. The caravan that makes it to the town carries the flowing curved sword, which belongs to a legendary blind swordsman. This blade master trained Melania, Mikola's twin sister. His disciples are also represented as a starting class in the game. It makes sense that his body is being returned to the Halig Tree where his student Melania sits, thinking she's watching over her twin brother, even though he's been taken away. The other caravan that gets lost carries the Torch of Saint Trina, who is actually Mikola's female alter ego. Saint Trina is the patron saint of sleep, and I believe this torch belonged to one of her followers, whose body was also meant to be returned to Mikola's tree, but sadly couldn't weather the storm. There were like no jokes in there.
Play me off, Johnny!
Lastly, I want to talk about the nomadic merchants. These guys populate every corner of the game world, although you might need to look around a bit for them. They wear these kind of goofy Santa hats, but they're actually based on a Mongolian design which fits their nomadic theme. Tragically, hundreds, maybe thousands of these people were locked away in a vault deep under the sewers of the capital city and left to rot. You can actually find your way to this vault to find a sea of petrified corpses, crammed into every nook and cranny of small, cramped cubicles surrounding a pit into an abyss. Some of the nomads yet live, maddened over the countless years of existing in this place, and others simply sit and play this beautiful, sad melody which echoes throughout their prison. With a bit of shit. With a
bit of skill,
you can climb your way down the abyss and find why they were locked there. The dominant religion of the Lands Between is heralded by the Two Fingers, envoys of the Greater Will, the outer god that controls the reality that we're in. However, counterpart to the Two Fingers is the Three Fingers, which is envoy to the Flame of Frenzy, an outer god that seeks to burn away the world to a pure energetic chaos. The nomads followed the Three Fingers and the Frenzy, and for their heresy, they were locked away to suffer for eternity along with the Three Fingers. If you sympathize with the nomads and share in their beliefs, then you can be embraced by the Three Fingers and see to it that the frenzied flame cleanses the world. Much like the antlion and Astel, this story also leans on our world for its inspiration. However, the roles were kind of flipped. In 1600s Russia, there was a movement amongst the peasants to make the sign of the cross with 2 fingers. The origin of this practice came from the iconography of Jesus holding up 2 fingers. The 2 fingers in that context was to symbolize his dual nature of a man and God. However, making the sign of the cross with 2 fingers was considered heresy by the higher clergy in Russia, with doctrine dictating that you use 3 fingers. This cult of 2 fingers was essentially slaughtered en masse by the Russian government for not using 3. Some were exiled deep into Siberia and eventually immigrated to Mongolia, which again we see in game as the Mongolian influenced attire of the merchants. Some were burned across their torso, the scars resembling large fingerprints, as we see when we embrace the 3 fingers. And perhaps most tragically, a significant number were thrown into an underground vault alive and sealed up. You hear people say video games can't be art, and yeah, maybe Black Ops 7 isn't art, but Elden Ring undeniably is, both in the more traditional sense, like its visuals, graphics, art style, that kind of stuff, but also in the way it mirrors our reality. These were just some examples of how Elden Ring manages to tell a story without telling you anything at all. If you haven't played it, you absolutely should. I know this isn't my usual content, don't worry, I'm still doing that. But if I can convince just one of you to fall in love with this game, that means this video was a success. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, leave a like, all that YouTube stuff. If you want to see more Elden Ring content like this, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know. But that's all I got for you today. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.